I froze, my breath caught in my throat, as Mark's fists clenched tightly by his sides. His eyes, alight with rage, bored into me with a fury I had grown all too familiar with. "You think you can talk back to me, Sarah?" he hissed through gritted teeth, his voice low and menacing. I tried to steady my trembling hands, but before I could utter a word, he lunged toward me. His face, twisted in anger, was a cruel reflection of the man I had once fallen in love with. I gasped as his fists came down with brutal force, slamming into my stomach. The pain was instant, sharp, and overwhelming, spreading through my already fragile body like wildfire. Gasping for air, I instinctively clutched my sides, but there was no escaping the agony. Confined to the sterile confines of a hospital bed, I felt utterly powerless. The metallic taste of fear filled my mouth as the sound of hurried footsteps approached the door. Was this the end? Would this nightmare ever truly end? Or was this the moment I would lose everything? My name is Sarah. I'm 42 years old, a housewife, and the mother of a bright and beautiful 8-year-old girl named Emma. From the outside, my life might seem like the picture of perfection: a loving husband, a cozy home, and a sweet little family. But appearances, as I've come to learn, can be heartbreakingly deceiving. Mark and I first met at a mutual friend's dinner party years ago. He was everything I thought I wanted: confident, attentive, and dripping with charm. From the moment his eyes locked with mine, I felt a spark unlike anything I'd ever known. Mark had this uncanny ability to say all the right things and make me feel like the only woman in the room. It wasn't long before he swept me off my feet. Within a year, I was wearing his ring, planning what I believed would be a beautiful future together. To support his vision for our life, I made a decision that, at the time, felt like the right one. I left my steady job at an accounting firm. Mark's dream was a traditional household, one where I would focus on creating a warm, nurturing home while he provided for us financially. At first, it seemed like a dream come true. Mark showered me with affection, bringing home flowers for no reason and planning romantic surprises. His promises of a blissful life made every sacrifice feel worthwhile. But those early days of happiness didn't last. Once the honeymoon phase faded, Mark changed. The man who had once adored me became distant, his warm gestures replaced with cold indifference. Compliments turned into criticisms, and his sweet surprises vanished entirely. Instead of asking about my day, he began pointing out everything I hadn't done to his satisfaction. The spotless home and perfectly cooked meals I once prepared with joy became expectations, and anything less earned his disapproval. Whenever I tried to talk to him about how I was feeling, he brushed me off as if my emotions didn't matter. "You're a housewife, Sarah," he would say with a smug grin. "It's not like you have a hard life." His words cut deeper than he could ever know, but I swallowed my pain and told myself to stay strong for Emma. She deserved stability, even if it meant enduring Mark's growing coldness to ensure it. Over time, the man I fell in love with disappeared entirely. In his place was a stranger, someone who no longer saw me as a partner, but as someone to criticize and control. The dream I had once cherished was now a nightmare I couldn't escape. Yet I held on to the hope that someday things might go back to how they once were. Mark's criticisms became an ever-present shadow in my life, casting darkness over every moment. No matter how hard I worked to meet his expectations, it was never enough. "You missed a spot on the counter," he would mutter as he dropped his bag on the kitchen table. "Why isn't Emma ready for bed yet? What do you even do all day?" Every word felt like a tiny knife slicing into my confidence. At first, I tried reasoning with him. I explained how much effort I put into keeping the house running smoothly and caring for Emma. But my words fell on deaf ears. "You're just making excuses, Sarah," he would reply with a dismissive wave of his hand. "You have one job: take care of this house and our family. Why is that so hard?" Mark's frequent job changes only added to the tension in our home. Each time he lost a job, he found a way to blame everyone but himself. His bosses were unfair, his co-workers incompetent. Somehow, though, these failures always became my fault. "You're supposed to make things easier for me," he would say bitterly. "Instead, you're just another problem I have to deal with." Raising Emma in the midst of Mark's unpredictable moods felt like walking a tightrope. I did everything in my power to create a happy and safe childhood for her, shielding her from his harshness as much as I could. But Mark's temper didn't spare her, either. He would scold her for the smallest things, leaving toys on the floor or laughing too loudly. I often found myself stepping in to protect her. "Don't take that tone with her," I'd say firmly, only to have his anger redirected toward me. "Maybe if you taught her some discipline, I wouldn't have to," he would snap. In those moments, I felt like I was raising two children, Emma and Mark. While Emma brought light and love into my life, Mark's constant anger and criticism drained every ounce of joy I tried to hold on to. I found myself walking on eggshells, doing everything in my power to avoid his wrath. But no matter how hard I tried, it was never enough. Mark's fury seemed to grow with each passing day, leaving me feeling more trapped and helpless than ever. The weight of his words and actions took a toll on me. I began questioning everything about myself, my worth, my abilities, even my identity. I couldn't remember the last time I had felt truly happy or free. All I knew was that I had to keep going, if not for myself, then for Emma. She was my anchor, the one bright spot in a sea of darkness. But as I lay in that hospital bed, gasping for air, I couldn't help but wonder, how much longer could I endure this? How much more could I take before I broke completely? The tension in the room was suffocating, and I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes as Mark's words echoed in my mind. Over the years, I had stopped arguing with him. It was too draining, and I knew it would only lead to more conflict. Instead, I chose to focus on Emma. I poured every ounce of my energy into giving her stability and love, even as my own spirit withered under the weight of Mark's cruelty. Mark, on the other hand, thrived on control. The man I once admired had become a stranger, cold, unrecognizable, and relentless in his need to belittle me. Despite everything, I stayed. I told myself it was for Emma, clinging to the hope that one day, things might get better. It was a typical Tuesday evening when my life took an unexpected turn. I had just finished grocery shopping, my mind preoccupied with the endless list of tasks awaiting me at home, preparing dinner, checking Emma's homework, and tidying up the kitchen. The weight of the grocery bags cut into my fingers as I crossed the street, completely unaware of the car speeding toward me. The screech of tires and the blare of the horn came too late. In a split second, everything went black. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. My entire body ached, and I couldn't move without pain shooting through me. Both of my legs were encased in heavy casts, and each breath sent sharp pangs through my ribs. A nurse stood beside me, her voice calm yet serious as she explained what had happened. I had been hit by a speeding car, and my injuries were severe. Recovery would take months. In those early days, I felt utterly helpless. The simplest tasks, sitting up, eating, even reaching for a glass of water, were impossible without assistance. My parents, Linda and David, became my lifeline. They visited me every day, bringing homemade meals, reassuring me that Emma was doing fine, and trying to lift my spirits with their unwavering support. But Mark? He was nowhere to be found. I had expected him to rush to my side the moment he heard about the accident. I thought he would hold my hand, tell me everything would be okay, and support me through this difficult time. Instead, there was nothing but silence. Days turned into weeks, and still he didn't come. Every time the door to my hospital room opened, I hoped it would be him. Each time, I was met with disappointment. It wasn't until the third week after the accident that Mark finally appeared. When he walked into the room, I felt a flicker of hope, but it was quickly extinguished. His expression wasn't one of concern or guilt. It was annoyance. He stood at the foot of my bed, arms crossed, his face set in a hard, irritated scowl. "Do you have any idea how much of a burden you've become?" were the first words out of his mouth. I stared at him, struggling to process the cruelty of what he had just said. His words hit me harder than the car that had put me in this bed. How could he blame me for something so far beyond my control? How could someone I had given so much of myself to treat me like this? What do you mean? Asked, my voice trembling. Mark scoffed, stepping closer. You're lying here doing nothing, and now I'm supposed to handle everything? I can't afford this, Sarah. You need to figure it out. Tears welled up in my eyes as his words sliced through me. Figure it out? I repeated, my voice breaking. I can't even walk, Mark. What do you expect me to do? Sell your jewelry, he snapped. You've got more than enough to cover this mess. I'm not wasting another dime on you. I froze, stunned by his cruelty. You're serious? I whispered. After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me? You're my husband, Mark. You're supposed to support me. Support you, he barked, his voice rising. You're useless now, Sarah. I have to carry this family on my back, and you can't even do your part anymore. The air in the room felt heavy, suffocating, as his anger boiled over. I couldn't hold back any longer. I've done nothing but support you, Mark, I said, my voice trembling with both anger and hurt. I gave up my career for you. I raised our daughter. I kept our home running while you bounced from one job to another. And now, when I need you most, you call me useless? His face twisted with rage. You think you can talk back to me? He shouted, slamming his fists onto the edge of the bed. The sound echoed through the room, and I flinched instinctively. But he wasn't done. Before I could say another word, he lunged toward me, his fists clenched tightly. I gasped as his fists struck my stomach with brutal force. Pain shot through my already broken body, leaving me breathless. The room spun around me as I tried to process what had just happened. Tears streamed down my face as I clutched my stomach, gasping for air. Before I could fully comprehend the attack, the door to my hospital room burst open. A nurse and a security guard rushed in, their faces a mixture of shock and determination. What's going on here? The nurse demanded, stepping between me and Mark. She provoked me. Mark shouted defensively, his fists still clenched. She's ruining my life. The security guard didn't hesitate. Sir, step back now, he ordered, grabbing Mark by the arm. Mark resisted, but the guard's grip tightened. You need to leave immediately, the guard said firmly. Mark turned to me one last time, his face pale with fury. You'll regret this, Sarah, he hissed. This isn't over. As the guard escorted him out of the room, I felt a strange mixture of fear and relief. My body ached, my heart was shattered, but for the first time, I realized something important. I couldn't stay silent any longer. Mark's cruelty had crossed a line, and I knew I had to find the strength to protect myself and Emma from him. Mark's cruelty had pushed me to my breaking point. As I lay in the hospital bed, tears streaming down my face, the nurse leaned over me, her voice gentle but firm. Are you okay? She asked, concern etched across her face. I nodded weakly, though every fiber of my being screamed otherwise. Please, I whispered, my voice trembling. Just keep him away from me. The days that followed were some of the hardest of my life. My parents, Linda and David, became my pillars of support. They refused to leave my side, stepping in to handle everything, from caring for Emma to speaking with a hospital administration about filing a formal complaint against Mark. Their unwavering presence was my lifeline in the storm that had engulfed me. Physically, I began to heal, but emotionally, I was a shattered mess. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Mark standing over me, his fists raised in rage. The memory of his attack replayed in my mind, an endless loop of pain and terror. Despite the overwhelming fear, I knew I couldn't stay silent. I had to act, not just for myself, but for Emma. She deserved better. I deserved better. With my parents' encouragement, I reached out to a lawyer, Rachel, who specialized in domestic abuse cases. From the moment I met her, I could tell she was sharp, determined, and exactly the ally I needed. As I poured out the details of my years with Mark, his emotional abuse, financial irresponsibility, and, most recently, his violent outburst in the hospital, she listened intently, her expression resolute. You've been through enough, Sarah, Rachel said, her tone firm. It's time to fight back. Her words ignited a small but powerful spark of hope in me. For the first time in years, I wasn't just surviving, I was preparing to take control of my life. The decision to fight back wasn't an easy one, but it was necessary. Mark had crossed every line, and I couldn't allow him to continue controlling or harming me. I needed to protect myself and Emma, Rachel, and I got to work immediately. She reassured me that we had a strong case. Between the hospital staff's testimonies and the medical records documenting your injuries, we can prove his actions beyond any doubt, she said. Her confidence bolstered mine. Together, we began gathering evidence. The nurse and security guard who had intervened in the hospital provided detailed statements about Mark's attack. Photos of my bruises, taken shortly after the incident, were added to the case file. My parents also contributed, documenting Mark's neglect and history of financial irresponsibility. Each piece of evidence painted a damning portrait of a man who had spent years tearing me down. The legal process was grueling, but I refused to back down. Mark, predictably, tried to intimidate me from the sidelines. He left voicemails that alternated between insincere apologies and thinly veiled threats. "You're ruining my life," he said in one. "If you think you can win, you're wrong." Rachel advised me to ignore him. "Don't give him the satisfaction of a reaction," she said. Her words became my mantra. I focused instead on my recovery. Physical therapy was excruciating, but each small victory, standing up for the first time, taking a single step, reminded me of my strength. Emma's bright laughter and my parents' constant encouragement were my guiding lights on even the darkest days. I wasn't just preparing for a legal battle. I was reclaiming my life. For years, Mark had chipped away at my confidence and independence. Now, I was determined to prove, to him and to myself, that I was stronger than he had ever imagined. When the day of the hearing finally arrived, I felt a mix of nerves and determination. Dressed in a simple yet confident outfit, I walked into the courtroom with Rachel by my side. My parents sat in the gallery, their reassuring smiles giving me strength. Emma, too young to understand the situation, stayed home with a trusted babysitter. Mark was already seated at the defense table. His once arrogant demeanor was replaced by visible unease. His lawyer whispered hurriedly in his ear, but Mark's eyes kept darting toward me. The man who had always sought to dominate and belittle me now looked small and powerless, a shadow of himself. Rachel began our case with a clear and compelling recounting of Mark's actions. She started with the assault in the hospital, outlining every detail with precision. The nurse and security guard testified, their statements painting a vivid picture of the violent outburst they had witnessed. Their words were powerful, and I could see their impact on the judge and jury. Next, Rachel presented the medical records. The documentation showed not only the injuries I had sustained in the car accident, but also the additional bruising caused by Mark's punches. When photos of my injuries were displayed, a heavy silence settled over the courtroom. The weight of the evidence was undeniable. Mark's lawyer tried to downplay the incident, describing it as a moment of frustration and claiming that Mark had apologized. But Rachel was relentless. She methodically dismantled every excuse, shifting the focus to Mark's long history of emotional abuse and manipulation. "This isn't just about one incident," Rachel said, her voice firm and unwavering. "This is the culmination of years of cruelty, neglect, and violence. Sarah has endured enough, and it's time for her to receive justice." Her words resonated deeply, not just with the courtroom but with me. For so long, I had felt trapped, powerless against Mark's control. But now, as Rachel spoke on my behalf, I felt a sense of validation and strength I hadn't experienced in years. Mark shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his face pale. He looked to his lawyer for reassurance, but none came. The evidence against him was overwhelming, and it was clear to everyone in the room that his attempts to intimidate and manipulate me had failed. As the hearing continued, I felt a growing sense of empowerment. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a survivor, a woman who had faced unimaginable pain and had come out stronger on the other side. Whatever the outcome, I knew one thing for certain: I would never let Mark control me again. When Mark took the stand, it was clear he was grasping at straws. His once confident demeanor had crumbled, replaced by an air of desperation. "She's exaggerating," he stammered, his voice lacking its usual bite. "I've done everything for this family, and she's the one trying to ruin me." Rachel, ever composed and relentless, began her cross-examination. With every question, she unraveled the web of lies Mark had tried to spin. Her questions were sharp, calculated, and inescapable, forcing Mark to confront his failures as a husband and father. By the time she finished, Mark looked visibly shaken, his defenses crumbling under the weight of the truth. After hours of testimony and deliberation, the judge delivered the verdict. Mark was found guilty of assault and domestic abuse. He was sentenced to 18 months in prison and ordered to pay significant fines, including compensation for my medical expenses. As the gavel struck, signaling the end of the trial, a wave of relief washed over me. Justice had finally been served. I left the courthouse with my parents by my side. Their reassuring presence reminded me that I wasn't alone anymore. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of freedom, a freedom to build a life where Emma and I could thrive without fear or control. It wasn't just a legal victory, it was a reclaiming of my life and my future. Within weeks of the verdict, I found a cozy apartment in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't large, but it was perfect for Emma and me. Each piece of furniture I picked out, every decoration I hung, felt like a small victory. It symbolized a fresh start, a life that was entirely my own. Moving into our new home gave me a renewed sense of purpose. Emma's laughter echoed through the rooms, filling the space with warmth and hope. Determined to provide a better life for my daughter and secure our future, I decided to explore new opportunities. One evening, as Emma and I sat on the couch watching videos online, an idea struck me. What if I shared my story, not just the struggles, but the strength it took to overcome them? The thought stayed with me, and after discussing it with my parents, I decided to take the leap. With their encouragement, I launched a YouTube channel. My first videos were raw and honest, recounting my journey through an abusive marriage, the fight for justice, and the steps I was taking to rebuild my life. My goal wasn't just to share my experience, but to offer hope to others who might be facing similar challenges. I wanted to show them that it was possible to overcome even the darkest moments. In my videos, I talked about resilience, self-care, and the importance of finding joy in small victories. To my surprise, people began connecting with my content almost immediately. Comments poured in, heartfelt messages from viewers sharing their own stories, thanking me for inspiring them and expressing their support. Within a few months, my channel grew beyond anything I had imagined. Brands reached out with collaboration offers, and the income from my videos quickly exceeded my expectations. For the first time in years, I felt financially independent. The success of the channel not only allowed me to secure Emma's future, but also reignited dreams I had long buried. I started saving for Emma's education and planning trips to create lasting memories together. Our small apartment became a haven of joy and laughter. Every evening, as we cooked dinner together or cuddled on the couch watching her favorite shows, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. The life we were building was full of love, happiness, and hope, things I had once thought were out of reach. But my channel wasn't just about me. It became a community. Each video I uploaded sparked conversations, brought people together, and created a space where others felt seen and heard. I shared tips for navigating tough times, stories of resilience, and lessons I had learned along the way. It was incredibly fulfilling to know that my experiences could help others find strength in their own lives. As my channel grew, so did my confidence. I no longer saw myself as the woman Mark had tried to break. I was stronger, wiser, and happier than ever before. Emma, my bright and curious daughter, was thriving too. Her laughter filled our home, her curiosity inspired me, and her love reminded me every day why I had fought so hard to escape the shadows of my past. One day, while wrapping up a video, I spoke directly to my audience. Thank you so much for watching and supporting my channel. Your encouragement means the world to me and motivates me to share more stories like this. If you found this inspiring, don't forget to like this video. It helps me continue this journey. I'd also love to hear from you. Have you faced challenges like these, or know someone who has? Let's start a conversation in the comments below. Together, we can build a community of strength, hope, and positivity. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon to stay updated with more empowering stories, life lessons, and tips for navigating tough times. Your support means everything to me. Thank you for being part of this journey, and I'll see you in the next video. As I ended the recording, a wave of pride and gratitude washed over me. The life Emma and I had built was far from what I had once envisioned, but it was ours, full of love, resilience, and endless possibilities. No matter what challenges lay ahead, I knew we would face them together, stronger than ever before.